Insulin resistance, the heart of type 2 diabetes, and hence the cause of diseases like heart disease and Alzheimer's disease. What if what your doctors told you about insulin resistance is completely untrue? Insulin resistance, as we know it, causes type 2 diabetes, and there are two phases. A slow phase where your insulin resistance slowly rises but the body is still able to produce enough insulin to compensate. Then when the pancreas is not able to produce enough insulin to compensate, the blood glucose rises, leading to type 2 diabetes. What your doctors told you is that your pancreas is burning out, unable to supply enough insulin to keep your blood glucose level down. You are then told to take more insulin to compensate, but that's not true. To understand insulin resistance, we have to know the root cause. Insulin functions to increase glucose entry into our liver cells, storing it as glycogen, and also to convert your excess carbohydrates into fat through de novo lipogenesis. We understand insulin through a lock and key mechanism. The insulin is like the key to our cells and the receptors to lock. Insulin bound to receptors open up the gate to let glucose in. So we believe that insulin resistance is when this lock and key mechanism is stuck and malfunctioning. Glucose stays outside the cell and the cell faces a state of internal starvation. That should mean that our livers cannot produce fat as no sugars are going in. Hence, internal starvation looks like this, a type 1 diabetes patient where there's little to none insulin, mimicking the proposed faulty lock and key mechanism to bring glucose into the cell. Nothing can be absorbed by the cells in the body. But this is what type 2 diabetes look like. This is internal starvation. Paradox. If glucose is not going into the cells, how then are the cells able to produce tons of fat? To understand this, we can imagine our liver as a balloon. We consume our carbohydrates, insulin causes uptake of sugar and production of fat. Under high persistent insulin, our liver is full of sugar and fat. When you have a fatty liver, that same dose of insulin is not able to put any more sugar in, and when you have no more insulin, all this fat and sugar just comes flowing back out. We see this in Japan. Our liver is already filled with sugar and fat, and we think that the cell is not opening the gate, so we hire more insulin guys to keep shoving more glucose in, and we deem this inability to shove more glucose in as insulin resistance. False! Hence, the whole pathophysiology of insulin resistance is not one of internal starvation, but one of an overflowing paradigm where your cells just cannot accommodate any more sugar and fat. Solution: don't put more in. A low carbohydrate diet or drugs such as acarbose which limits the absorption of carbohydrates, and burn it off through intermittent fasting and exercise. All this allows your body to pull that fat preferentially from the liver and the pancreas, reversing the fatty infiltration of these organs. The cells can once again have space for insulin to allow more sugar to come in, reactivating the beta cells that were merely too clogged up with fat. Conclusion: insulin resistance is not an internal starvation of the cells, but an overflowing paradigm. Remove that excess sugar and fat, and insulin resistance can be reversed.